Have you heard about Stephenie Meyer's newest book, Midnight Sun? It may just change the way that the entire series turns out, and the special effects have to be better than that CGI baby that was creepy enough for the crew to name it after Chucky. This is everything that you want to see in the new Twilight series. So do you remember the creepy CGI baby from Breaking Dawn Part 2? Well, it could have been worse. Originally, they'd wanted an animatronic doll to stand in for the half-human, half-vampire baby. Except the doll was so horrifying that it earned the name Chuckesmee. After Chucky from the Child's Play series, if you couldn't figure that out, they knew right away that they couldn't use this. No one was gonna believe that's the baby of Robert Pattinson and Kristen Stewart. And so the decision to CGI over it was sort of a last-minute fix that even director Bill Condon would admit didn't work out. He referred to the special effects as a disaster, but expressed optimism that something like that probably wouldn't happen if he were to do it again. We hope that this means that they can find a better way to give us Renesmee in the series, because, let's be honest, there's not much that could be worse than this. And yet, the special effects aren't the only concerns that we have for Renesmee. Do you know what imprinting is in the Twilight universe? You may not want to. It's what happens to a werewolf when they meet their soulmate.
And the wolf in question cannot live if something happens to the other person.
Sounds sweet, right? Almost as sweet as subscribing to our channel would be, so maybe you should just take a moment to do that right now. Because, getting back to imprinting for a minute here, it sounds all fun and games until Jacob imprints on baby Renesmee in Breaking Dawn. Yeah, it may just be better for the series to avoid bringing up this plotline altogether. It's one of the more controversial aspects in the Twilight franchise for sure, and if they're gonna mention it, we hope that they at the very least find a way to make it come across less predatory, because as it is, imprinting is really not a good look, and neither is Edward watching Bella while she sleeps. We've all heard the criticisms against Twilight. Many complain that Bella was weak, and we have to admit there are a few red flags in her relationship with Edward. For one thing, what's with the whole bit,
I like watching you sleep.
that's not normal. And are Edward's mood swings supposed to be attractive? In a lot of ways, Edward acts more like a stalker than a supportive boyfriend when he and Bella first meet. And if we're gonna be rebooting this franchise, then they need to address that. The easiest way would probably be writing Edward's stalkerish tendencies out entirely, although they might be able to do something by playing more with Edward's perspective. And if he is gonna be up to his old shenanigans, can we at least have a version of Bella that's willing to call him out? A more empowered Bella would go a long way towards making this series. Did you know there's been a new Twilight book since the last movie? Yeah, Midnight Sun, and Stephenie Meyer published it on August 4th, 2020. Like, it basically just follows the same plot as the first Twilight book, except it's all from Edward's point of view. It fills in all those pesky little questions you've been asking yourself, like, what was Edward doing all those times he went on hunts? And what was he really thinking the first time he saw Bella? It's a great read for anyone looking for a more complex breakdown of the Twilight lore, but we're wondering how Midnight Sun could affect this series. The series could go back and forth between Edward and Bella's perspective, adapting both Twilight and Midnight Sun at the same time, which would definitely be interesting to see. But of course, we all know Stephenie Meyer won't be the only writer involved. There's another reason Twilight's come under fire in recent years. This one has to do with Jacob and the big reveal that he's a werewolf because he's a member of the Quileute tribe. This might be okay if it weren't for the fact that the Quileute tribe is a very real tribe. There are around 2,000 people in Western Washington who call the tribe home. And they aren't werewolves or anything, but they have seen a very real effect from this strange representation. If we're going to have a new Twilight series, then it'll need to be a lot more respectful to the Quileute tribe this time around. One huge step towards this would be by hiring Indigenous writers, so that we get an authentic voice from the Indigenous characters. In fact, a more diverse writing room in general would probably be for the best with this series, considering Twilight hasn't had the best history with these things. Do you remember Jasper's backstory? In both the books and the movies, he was a Confederate soldier.
All the training the Confederate Army gave me was useless against the newborns.
Who was taken in by a woman raising a vampire army.
Maria.
Yikes. You guys sure you're committed to that whole Confederate soldier bit? It wouldn't be so bad if the story didn't frame it as if he were one of the good guys. If the series is going to insist on keeping him as a Confederate soldier, then at the very least we'd like to see this lead to some sort of meaningful conversation or character development for Jasper. Both the books and the movies sort of brush it off as if it were no big deal, but in our current political climate, we can't imagine it going down the same way. But if they're going to fix Jasper's backstory, there's another way they could go about doing that. The series needs a more diverse cast this time. As much as we'd love to see some familiar faces, the fact that the Cullens are all mysterious, well-traveled vampires who form an adopted family gives us a lot of wiggle room. And this was apparently something the director Catherine Hardwicke wanted to take advantage of while casting for the first movie. She pushed for a more diverse cast, suggesting things like Alice be Japanese, but Stephenie Meyer shot her down. As Catherine put it, she probably just didn't see the world that way. Considering the characters she'd written had all been described as being white in the books, and we definitely want to respect the author's wishes, but we still think that a more diverse cast would give us a lot more interesting conversations between our characters.
I was the youngest major in the Texas Cavalry.
Especially when it comes to issues like Jasper's backstory. Now, while we're on the subject of the cast, there's another thing we'd like to see from them. Some cameos. The original cast of the movies did such a great job, and while we've come to live with the sad knowledge that we won't likely be seeing them reprise their roles in the series, that doesn't mean they can't appear in other ways. Imagine Kristen Stewart playing one of the vampires that joins the Cullens in their war against the Volturi, or Taylor Lautner as one of the teachers at Forks High School. There are plenty of opportunities for us to be able to see some old faces again, and we'd love to see how the series might fit them in. The Twilight franchise is no stranger to cameos anyway, considering the first movie included this shot of author Stephenie Meyer sitting in the diner. Now, if only the first movie had paid closer attention to their pacing than they had to cameos. Let's be real here, not a whole lot happened in the first Twilight book. This is a detail that's as loved as it is hated about the series, but it's definitely a problem when you consider just how late into the story the villains get introduced. If we're going to have Twilight as a series, then we're going to need to get our bad guys doing something a bit earlier on. The movie did this well by sprinkling in a few scenes of our villains hunting.
It's always the same inane questions. Who are you?
What do you want?
But we would definitely like to get more of a sense of the vampire world being a threat in this series. They're going to have to be careful with how they do it, so as to not rob Twilight of the thing that gave it its charm to begin with, but we're still excited to see how the series can flesh them out. This entry is sort of contrary to what we've said before. As much as we would like to see some better pacing and a better sense of what the villains want in the series, we also need a lot of moments that are just from a teenage girl's perspective. In some ways, the bad pacing of the book was sort of a good thing, because it gave us a lot of time with Bella, just trying to be a normal teenager, or about as you can get when you're crushing on a 108-year-old vampire. We'd like to see this series fully dive into these feelings, and stay away from becoming the sort of action-packed teen vampire shows we've already gotten with The Vampire Diaries or True Blood. Instead, Twilight needs to be about Bella's experience, and we'd like to see that maintained throughout the series. So, between a more empowered heroine and better special effects, there are plenty of ways that this new series could be even better than the movies. What did you think of our requests for the Twilight series? And is there anything you'd like to see that we didn't mention? Make sure to let us know in the comment section down below.